Hi, Jeff.
Hey man, how are you? Oh, I'm here. That's
Good.
great.
Finally get a chance to meet you.
I know. Sorry about the wait on that. Let me see if I can make this look less. How have you been?
Okay. Okay. I guess that's the real question for you. So we're recording now, by the way.
Yeah, that's
So
right.
just to let
Do
you
you
know that
cut or do you leave it? Do you cut or leave
we
uncut?
we leave it uncut, if that's
Oh,
okay.
okay. That's fine.
So thanks for joining me. Can you
Thank
just
you.
tell us your first name and maybe just a little bit about your background or your occupation?
Yeah, my name's Jeffrey White. I'm from Louisiana. While I was there, I did all sorts of things, several different types of construction jobs, from drywall to operating a Howick steel rolling machine, sold cars, fixed small engines. Then I decided to do something different for a while and went to Ukraine. I had a family member that had been several times and really enjoyed it. Um, so I went over there, planned on staying for 11 months to a year. And while I was there, I met my wife. Um, we dated for a year, and I guess now we've been married for almost 2 years. Yeah. And we have a son.
Beautiful.
Yeah. And
Beautiful.
while I was
Eh,
in Ukraine, I taught English.
Okay, great. And where are you speaking to me? Where are you speaking to me from now?
We are still in Warsaw, Poland.
Okay. And where were you in the Ukraine, and what were you doing when you had to evacuate? What was that day or those moments like?
That was intense because most of Ukrainians did not believe anything was actually going to happen. Everyone assumed that it was all political. So we were living, we have a cottage or a dacha, like a couple kilometers, maybe 10, 20 kilometers north of Kiev. So on the 24th, when they started launching missiles at military bases and airstrips, we woke up at 5:30 in the morning because our house was shaking from missile strikes, which is a really bizarre way to wake up. Maybe the gas station exploded for some reason. But you're just, especially as an American, I think, because you're never worried about anything on home soil. You're just like, what is happening right now? Um, yeah,
Yeah. So, and as an American, I don't know if you were watching or reading, American news, but for weeks here, we were being advised on a day-to-day basis by the administration, this is happening, this is happening, this is happening, and of course, there's this disconnect. So you're not a Ukrainian, reading American news, saying, what do they know? You're an American. Did you have what was your sense of balance there?
the sense of balance was, I assumed a lot of it was sensationalist, because that happens a lot
Sure,
nowadays.
of course, of course.
Um, and I'm from Louisiana, and every single year we all almost die from a hurricane. So I got it. I was like, okay, it's probably okay, and all the natives are fine. All the native, I would assume that they would know better. I was wrong. Um, but I had already purchased 6 liters of water, food, and different travel supplies, just in case. So we were actually ready to just pack some clothes and leave.
Okay, so you actually prepared because a number of people I spoke with already were total Ukrainians were not prepared at all.
Oh yeah,
So they were running around preparing then. And since you're in the northern part of Kiev, now that the whole world knows the map of Ukraine really well, I would think
yeah,
that the bombing was pretty close to you because
oh yeah,
we're in the north. So
yeah.
what?
No,
So
house shaking is not an exaggeration.
yeah.
Yeah.
So what did you do at that point? Did you stay? Did you say, "Oh, we're out of here now"? What was your thinking, and what was your actions?
We went downstairs and got into the most secure part of our home that didn't require us going outside to like a cellar. Um, and we sat for a little while. And the Russians did what people expected them to do is they stopped bombing at sunup. And so once the sun started to come out, I went and topped our car off with gas just in case and came back home because there was still sort of an idea of maybe this is just to cripple Ukraine's military. And we sat and prepared and make sure we had everything we needed for 3 or 4 hours. And then we heard that they were paratrooping Russian soldiers into Odessa and I don't remember the other city. Odessa. They were so once I realized they were dropping soldiers in from the sky, we left and we start going west.
And what was the situation like at that point? Was there incredible traffic? Were everyone in their cars, or were people still kind of hopeful that, oh, we'll get through it, stay right here?
At that point, because we were far enough outside of the city that we got to just drive for a little ways. And because now I know that there's some sort of land invasion happening, we wanted to stay away from the borders. So we actually went southwest.
Got it.
As far as traffic goes, we had a little while before traffic got insane. But immediately, massive lines at gas stations. Like if I had not gone to get gas when I did, we would have been in the gas station line for 3 hours.
Got it. So that was the smart thing. It's just like, hey, there's a problem. Let me go get gas just so we're ready. All right. Well, good for you. And then were you in your mind, were you like, hey, let's go to Poland? Or were you thinking, hey, let's go hang out in the western part of the country?
No, it was immediately, we'll go to Poland.
Okay. You knew that already.
Yeah. Right. Actually, I lied. That's incorrect. Our first goal was to go southwest to another reasonably sized city. And we bought a hotel room, one of the last hotel rooms available by the time we actually clicked the button, for like 4 nights. And so we're talking, 5 or 6 hours after we woke up from explosions, all the hotels in the city were booked. We were lucky to find a room
in the south or in the western part of Ukraine.
Yeah, southwest.
Right, southwest.
Yeah, okay. Just to get more towards the meat of the country.
Yeah, and away from the Russian. Yeah, away from Russia.
Yeah,
really. Right.
And so we booked a hotel for 4 nights and drove down there. And before we actually got there, we knew we weren't staying. There was way too much military activity for us to stay in country. So we booked it. We got in our hotel room, went to sleep, sort of sorted through, brought up some food that we had. You asked me about the journey. Slow. We traveled for 8 hours the first day, to go, I think 150 kilometers.
Mm-hmm. So it's been 90 miles to go 90 miles.
Yeah.
8 hours, 90 miles. Just to give us a context. Yeah. And your wife, who's Ukrainian, and how old is your child now?
Now he's getting close to 2 months now.
Oh, he's 2 months. Oh, wow. So he's little.
Almost 2 months now.
So he was born right before the invasion.
February 7th.
Okay. So what's your wife thinking? What's her state of mind? Well, you seem like a pretty calm, I'll take care of it. I don't like it, but I'll take care of it.
Yeah.
What was going through her mind, and where's her family at this point?
Her family, 1, 2, 3, 4 family members have been in Kiev the entire time.
And they've stayed.
Mm-hmm. And then her brothers and their families went south and west.
Got it.
To safe cities.
Right. I see.
And everyone's safe. Everyone's fine. We both handle intense situations pretty well.
Yeah.
So there wasn't any like running around or panicking. But there was, I think she made one funny comment. So in Ukraine, when it's not like America, when you have a baby, you do not have that baby like registered and like little handprints and footprints and stuff before you leave the hospital. You have your baby, you leave the hospital, and within the next month or 2, you go to a special other building and register your child.
Got it.
So Jeffrey wasn't registered anywhere. So, like the bombs are falling and she's like, well, and it's very important to have this done to get, which is what we're still working on now. And so she's like, we need to go into Kiev and get him registered. I was like, no, we're not, we can't do that. It's just, it was such a reality shift is that it was kind of hard to grasp all at one time, but we were pretty calm.
Yeah. Yeah. And how is it at the border going to Poland? Because the pictures and the images, videos that we saw,
yeah,
it looked like a real, crazy, chaotic situation.
Yeah.
And also, you are an American.
Mm-hmm.
I assume she's not an American yet, or doesn't have citizenship. So how did that all flush out?
So that situation's intense. From what you can see on the news, there were 30-kilometer lines for a while of just cars.
So it's 20 miles. Just doing the conversion.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, okay. But no, just back-to-back cars. It was really intense. And then buses and taxis were dropping people off at an intersection 20 miles away, and they would just start walking. And this is after they've already walked, who knows how far. So that situation was naturally intense. People are scared. They're trying to get out of the country. They think they're almost to the border, and then they hit this wall of cars, and there's nothing to do. So you've got people driving around, just cutting in the line or trying to cut in the line. People are just simply walking. People are abandoning their cars. We sat in line for a while. We sat in line all one night. And then we abandoned our car and just walked for 10 kilometers. Luckily, there was a bus for women and children because so many people were walking that they would bus you the last 15 kilometers. And we got on that, rode to the border, went to the women and children line, and my wife and son were actually through the process in about 3 hours. So as far as the women and children go, once you get to the border, it's a pretty quick process. They're doing a really good job of taking care of the women and children on the Ukrainian side and obviously on the Polish side. For men, foreign men, because they decided obviously that Ukrainian men weren't leaving. So for foreign men, they stuck them all in this other line with no organization at all. A line is not an accurate word. It was just an area without any ropes or defined lines or anything else. And you're supposed to kind of like funnel through into the secondary area, then funnel through into another area. And you have all these tired, exhausted people that are trying to get out of a country that's not theirs. People are pushing on each other and yelling and cursing and screaming. I don't know what this woman was doing there. This woman died in the line. I'd been there about 7 hours, and she died from exhaustion and anxiety. I'm assuming. Okay. But she was dead. 13 hours into the line, people started passing out from dehydration and exhaustion. Situation was honestly, it was really poorly handled. Almost no organization at all. Just a bunch of, you had guards that were yelling and waving some sticks, and you had really, really tired people that were tired of being in this line. They'd been there some of them, they'd been at the border for days.
And how did you know that your wife had gotten out? I guess you communicated by cell phone?
We communicated by cell phone.
Yeah. Right. So you knew she was through, and now she was just waiting for you on the other side. Yeah. And how is it traveling, going through all this craziness with a 1 month, 2 month old child? I mean, that must have been, I would thought, stressful, especially once you abandon your car. Okay, now we're walking.
Yeah.
Or now she's waiting, she didn't necessarily know it was going to be 3.5 hours. Was it handled with food and diapers and food for her, food for you, food for the baby, or water? What was happening in that regard?
I had purchased emergency food and I'd already bought water. So just if we stopped the car to use the restroom or something, we would fill up a 1.5 liter bottle from this big jug that I had. She would change the diaper in the back of the car and I would drive. We drove 8 hours the first day, 13 hours the second day, and I don't know how long the last day. Traffic was ridiculous. We'd move like 50 kilometers in 4 hours.
So when you abandoned your car, you didn't necessarily know, okay, we're going to walk these 10K, these 6 miles, and we're just going to cross over. That's what you're thinking. You didn't necessarily know,
Yeah.
And it turned out that she, thank God, got through after a 3.5 hour wait, holding the baby,
Yep.
and juggling whatever else she's carrying. But she didn't necessarily know that. You don't know that.
No. Yeah. That was pretty, I think, traumatic, actually. We've been traveling at this point for 3 or 4 days in really weird, hard circumstances. Everything's harder with an infant. If we had been by ourselves, we would have just not stopped driving until we got there. Yeah. And then we get to the border. We think we're crossing together. And this guard looks at me and he's like, no, you go that way.
Right.
And so we're right here at the end, and then we get split up, and she has to go forwards by herself, and I have to go over here.
And you got to split up whatever stuff you have
at
that moment. And then there's probably something in the back of your mind or her mind, like, okay, are we going to meet up? When and how are we going to meet up? Yeah. Where's he going? And why, there's all this kind of thoughts that go through your head, I would think.
Oh, yeah.
Let alone during a super stressful time and tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people around you doing the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, anyway, so then she makes it through and you've still got another, 5-7 hours, or I don't recall, before you make it through.
22 hours.
22 hours. Okay.
22 hours total standing in line. Yeah.
Right.
And that was a short version. Most people will stand in that line for 30 to 48 hours.
Right. Now, as an American, well, I'm not going to hypothesize. So what was it like as an American? Just the same as everyone else? Hey, you're just another body to cross over when we get to you. Was that?
Yeah. That's pretty much what they did. They're like, no, we don't care. Go in line with everybody else.
Yeah. Of course.
Yeah. And it was like, the line technically was to get the first checkpoint was to leave Ukraine and then they checked, are you even approved to go to Poland? And then you go through another line and you get your visa or whatever. And it's like, as an American, I don't need any of these things. I don't need to be approved. I don't need anything else. I don't need a visa. I can just go to Poland. But they didn't care at first. So what ended up happening for that was both of the first two sections of the line, I was in the first line for 13 hours and at some point went up and was like, can I go through now? And they're just, okay. You had to find a different guard and they would let you through.
Right. Wow. Okay. And are you standing in line? Are you sitting? Are you sitting and standing?
You are standing. You're touching at all times. You're touching at least 3 people and usually 4. So you actually crowded. Oh yeah. You can actually kind of sleep while standing.
Right. Just lean against whoever is there sleeping too.
Because there's so many people.
Right. Right.
Yeah. Now my feet were messed up for days after I finally got to Poland.
So you cross over, and then how did you find your wife, or how did she find you?
Actually, that wasn't so bad. A friend of a friend knew a pastor of a church in Poland, and they told them about us, and they had my phone number. I had a big battery pack with me, so I always had my phone charged. And they came and got us and brought us to the same place. So the guy that came and picked up my wife actually waited on her for 8 hours, because remember, we thought that I was going to get through this line in 5 or 6. So once we realized that was definitely not the case, they took her from the border to Warsaw. And then 24 hours later, they had somebody come and pick me up when I actually got through.
You
We
got you
both got taken to
texted
the same house. Yeah.
you texted or email. So yeah, got it. And now
Yeah.
Warsaw, if I recall, is what 4 hours away from the border, five
Yes.
hours.
Yeah. Yep.
Right.
Yep. Yeah. And once you're in Poland, this really is you are very well taken care of. They are, it's just a fantastic job. And as I understand it, a lot of it's volunteer work. I mean, yeah, there's blankets and hot food and soup and all kinds of stuff. Very clearly done, super stream, it's very nice once you're in Poland.
And there's no bombs.
And there's no bombs.
You're like back in
Wow.
back in civilization, kind of.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
people are helping you.
Yes. And people are helping. Yeah.
So were you in touch with your family in the States at all?
Yes. Yes. Um, yeah. They were super worried. There's a lot of prayer. Um, because it's really it's a very intimidating situation, especially, for my parents and, family. It all seems, all they can do is watch the news. It's like, okay, well, somewhere near my son got bombed. And now it's taken them 3 to 4 days just to get to the edge of the country. And now he's stuck in a line. So that was pretty intense. But yeah, I was able to communicate and keep letting them know, hey, we're alive, we're okay, we're trying to get to Poland.
Yeah, and there's nothing they can. So you feel helpless as well because there's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah,
Nothing they can do about it.
Mm-mm.
And what's your so okay? So good news. Thank God you made it there. What's your daily life like now, or what did you do the first few days you were in Poland? You went to this church.
Yeah. So we were taken really good care of. The first 24 hours in Poland that I was in Poland, I slept, I think, 17 hours. Just I slept 45 minutes the night before we got to this line, and then I stood there for 22 hours. I mean, I don't even know how much sleep I had, but not enough. So I slept for 17 hours. We hung out. We went to the embassy to try and push things forwards. Met some difficulties there because in Poland, they do not allow, it's illegal to be a surrogate mother. So the embassy didn't even know how to do DNA tests. My wife is not a surrogate mother, but that's an important detail because they weren't equipped to do DNA tests. They've never done one before. They didn't know how. We were literally probably, I don't know, since this was made illegal, one of the first 3 families to have a DNA test done in Poland.
And she needed a DNA test because they wanted to prove that she was the mother.
Right.
And not just,
or that I'm the father. That I'm the father.
That you're the father.
That I'm the father. Right. So, by the time we get to our visa stuff, it's really simple. I'm American. My son's American, and she is the mother of an American. And so we can just go over.
Right. Right. So you have friends and relatives that have stayed behind. Are they fighting? Are they hunkering down? Are they in the subway? Are they? What's their situation?
They're the brothers and their families are safe and with a family. Now that Russia claims that it's accomplished its main goal,
right?
And so it's going to go somewhere else. They'll probably go back and visit Kiev or their homes and check on everything. As far as her father and mother and grandmother and aunt are concerned, they have been going just in between their apartments. One apartment is on the outskirts of Kiev, and it's in between a bunch of other apartments, so relatively safe. And then the other apartment is same thing. It's inside of the city, but surrounded by other apartments. So some bored person isn't going to shoot it with a tank or whatever.
Right. Now, from speaking with some of the other folks, a lot of the senior citizens, I assume those folks you're talking about are elderly, chose not to leave because, where are they going to go? Maybe they don't speak English. Maybe they don't speak Polish. They're just like, hey, they're more resigned to just staying and just hoping for the best. as opposed to
Yeah.
younger folks. You can go to another country and you'll figure it out and you'll get another job, that kind of thing. And so was that their reason for not evacuating?
Their reason for not going anywhere was that to watch over grandma.
Right.
Because grandma had just gotten to the point where she couldn't take care of herself.
Got it.
She was, she wasn't able to move around her apartment very well right before this all happened. So someone needed to stay and take care of her.
So a lot of folks I talk to have friends and family and relatives in Russia. And there's a huge disconnect between, of course, what your experience is and what they're being shown in the news in Russia. Does your family still have friends and relatives on the Russian side?
Some relatives that I have not spoken with, and I'm not sure if my wife has either. Mm-hmm. I had Russian students, and that has been actually really interesting. So I had, I don't know, probably half, 10 or 15 Russian students probably. And most of them are opposed and kind of like ashamed, at least when they're speaking with me about what's happened. All of them that I spoke with are distressed, but I had two that were in support, and they are not really in support of the war. They blamed America and they blamed Ukraine
and NATO for creating this. Right. Understood.
Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Which is really kind of interesting. What that level of, Russia's known for its propaganda, and its sort of control over the news and assassinating reporters and stuff like that. It's kind of like a thing that's known. But it has a very interesting effect on the way that people will reason. And so I had a long conversation because I was interested to see what, how this conversation would go. What the entire world opposes Russia. Russia is the only one saying the things that Russia says. Like North Korea and China are not siding with you. Like what does that mean to you? Do you actually believe they had a Russian report where satanic American veterans were going to fight the Russians? And that was on the news. So it's just crazy stuff. But it's what's on the news. And it's, the best I can figure is from their perspective, that's what else are you going to believe? It's kind of, if I was in their situation, every Western product is now gone. Your currency is crashed. You can't use Visa or MasterCard. The Russian police are checking people's phones in the streets. The entire world's against you. At that point, I think it's kind of an easier jump to be like, well, this is obviously somebody else's fault. Like, my country wouldn't do this to us. Is the only thing I could think. Because it's a super weird conversation, honestly.
Yeah, two different realities.
Yeah, very much two different realities. And you ask the question of, okay, like, well, America's doing this or this. It's like, well, Russia, pointing out the murder, the people are dying. It's like, well, people in authority in Russia have a history of not caring about their citizens. Millions of them dying because of it. Russia stole Crimea. Russia's attacked, and none of these things make any sense. Like, this is all, doesn't matter that Ukraine's not actually in NATO yet, or may never be. Doesn't matter that Ukraine's defending itself from an attacker. It's still America's fault, and it's still NATO's fault.
It's really weird, and I think sometimes it's easier. Well, not it is much easier to buy into that narrative that they're
That's right.
presenting to you versus, because the truth of the matter is the true reality is things are very nuanced, and there's a long history, and there's a lot of pieces to the puzzle. And who wants to sit and listen to that when in 1 or 2 minutes I can just get The View on Russian TV and just buy into it?
Yeah.
So yeah, and that's true in the United States as well, where we have this misinformation and hoax theories and conspiracy theories, and that just kind of fits whatever people want to believe. So it's easier to latch onto that sometimes than to truly look at and we don't have to get into that discussion, but I clearly hear what you're saying. It's unfortunate.
Yeah, no, you definitely can't just be like, oh, Russia has propaganda and then ignore what happens in America. For sure. No, we have our own propaganda.
We have our own issues.
Yeah. Just massive news stories, will come up and vanish depending on who they're about. And
right.
Yeah. Facebook does its own little. Have you ever noticed on Facebook, whatever your political beliefs are, those are the posts you see?
Yeah, well, it's actually, I agree with that, and I've read that as well and experienced that. The unfortunate thing is, getting a little bit off topic, but I'm happy to.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. The more that happens, the more I read stuff that reinforces my belief.
Exactly.
And the more you read stuff that reinforces your belief, the further apart we get.
Yeah.
Because I lock into this and you lock into that. When you're shown a myriad of views and it reduces your level of solidity and certainty in one view, then actually the closer and more open-minded we are. Yeah. And that's not a theory. That's been proven in social science. So yeah.
That's why I had to get off, because I realized, I'm getting sucked over to one of these things, and all of a sudden these, I don't know what you would want to call them. They're like slogans, basically. It relate either extremely conservative or extremely liberal slogans or attacks against the other party or lifting up themselves. You find yourself just, oh yeah, that makes sense. But why? I don't have any data. I don't have any facts. I don't even know where the story came from.
Right.
And it's like, wait a minute, why does that make sense? It doesn't make any sense. This is nonsense.
It fits your narrative.
It fits your narrative. And so it's like, if you kind of take that narrative and you kind of put it into the entire Russian media, then you can begin to understand, like, this is why normal citizens are supporting this. Because it's sort of like having a Facebook filter that only plugs one idea, but for your entire life and for your parents' entire lives and your grandparents' entire lives. It's always been that way.
Yeah, for sure. What I try to do when I read the paper is I'll read maybe 6 or 7 different papers or online, including Fox News, including conservative, including liberal, just to kind of see, because at the end of the day, you can kind of wean out, filter out the facts. And but you can't do that when you just read, one specific narrative, because then your mind gets kind of sucked into things that are not necessarily true.
Yeah. No, on my social media, I very intentionally subscribe to ideals that I disagree with.
Yeah, let's see what they're saying, because there's probably some truth to it. There's probably not a lot of truth, but some truth. There's little truth, a lot of truth. Who knows? Yeah. And it's both quote unquote sides are certainly guilty of it. So what is your hope for the future? Now you're in Poland with your wife and your newborn. What's the plan?
Our goal, and what we're slowly working towards, is to go back home to Louisiana, or to my home at least.
Okay.
So we have finally got our DNA test done, like I told you. It's on its way back to America. And once it gets there and the embassy in Warsaw has the results, then we will expedite my wife's visa and see how that process goes, and we'll buy plane tickets.
Beautiful.
And we'll go back to Louisiana and we'll drink.
Beautiful.
black coffee, and sit in the woods.
As my grandmother, who I think is from Kiev, used to say, "From your mouth to God's ears."
Yeah. Yeah.
So I don't know what news you saw when you were in the Ukraine or in Poland, but the United States and really the entire Western world is rallying around the Ukrainian people.
Oh man. Yeah.
And I know that I'm part of a number of different efforts here to get humanitarian aid. I'm in San Diego to Poland and to Ukraine. It's very, very heartwarming, sad, heartbreaking as well, because I'm working with a number of Ukrainians and I see, what they're feeling.
Yeah.
So does that kind of filter through that kind of effort that the world, or at least the United States, is pushing forward?
Does it filter through? Yes, it does. So we read, my wife reads a lot of news. I sort of limit what I read because there was there was so much random talk and speculation about things escalating. But and it's like we can't do anything about it. We're just going on another incredible journey. If something pops off again. But yeah, it filters through. It's very I think it's very meaningful. They definitely are aware of it in Ukraine, that the world is supporting them and watching them. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it definitely filters through for sure.
Yeah. So is there anything you want to say to people who listen, who are listening to this? And just so you know, I don't know if that got across in my emails to you. It's the first time we've spoke. One of the reasons I'm doing this, one of the many reasons, is because I want people to hear voices from people that are there experiencing it, and not something through just TV or the newspaper, but just real people telling their real stories. So that's my motivation. Anything that you want to say to people listening or watching this podcast?
I think, I don't know. You said you found there are several avenues and ways to support people. Yeah, these people are going through a really hard time. And they are fighting extremely hard. And for people in big cities, when they go to sleep at night, they wait for air raid sirens to wake them up, and then they go downstairs. Or if now that they've been doing this for weeks, they might not. But their day-to-day is intense. It's hard. So yeah, send your prayers. If you want to buy specific material goods to send over, or if you want to coordinate with someone and say, I'm going to send you money, this is what I want you to buy, whether it's in Poland or Ukraine. If it's probably for Poland, consider that what's going to be in Poland are children and mothers who have traveled for days, who are away from their home. Quite possibly their husbands got left behind at the border. And so if there's a way for you if you can understand something or think of something to give someone who's in that situation, just to make them smile or bring a little joy in their life, no matter how silly it is, think about that sort of thing and see if you can find a way to do that. They've been leaving toys on bridges, but some sort of joy.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, Jeff. Well, thank you for taking the time to speak with me. We wish you and your family safe travels back to the United States. And I look forward to meeting you one day in person.
Yeah.
So thank you again, and please stay safe.
Thank you. Thank you for what you're doing.
Okay. Bye. Be well. Bye-bye.